Knockout legends in the building. Like, comment and subscribe. So I just watched the Froch and Fighting review, post-fight review on Anthony Joshua, and it's actually interesting what Carl says, but I'm going to play a clip and then I'm going to give my opinion on that clip. So with no further ado.
Still getting badly beaten, but he was growing in confidence, and Dubois was probably getting tired. Dubois worked him out for 4 rounds. He unloaded a lot of energy in them first 4 rounds, Dubois. He showed a lot of fitness, and he stayed with it. But at the end of round 4, he sat down in his corner, and the advice from Ben Davison was very strange.
Rush stepping in with the jab almost every time, unless you're galloping around. Slip and bring it up, yeah?
If there's a bit of a lull, in behind that double jab, bring it up, roll the dice. He'll double another right hand, lift it, yeah? Roll the dice, roll the dice.
Ben Davison told him to roll the dice, told him to go for it. I think it was a double jab, but the main punch would have been the right uppercut. He wanted AJ to look for the uppercut on his front foot, which is a dangerous punch, because when you throw that uppercut out of range, you leave your chin exposed. And like Shane McGuigan pointed out on BBC 5 Live Radio, which we've seen clips of, he worked with Daniel Dubois as well for a couple of fights. He knows the game, he knows boxing. His dad, obviously, Hall of Famer Baron McGuigan. So he knows the game. And he did say, you're going to open yourself up to getting caught with a right hand. This is before it happened.
Doubling his eyes.
I think that's dangerous advice there, to be honest. I mean, getting him to bring it up off the double jab. Daniel throws that right hand straight off that double jab. And by bringing it up, he means an uppercut. He's going to walk himself straight onto his short right hand. If you ask me, I'd just say keep your hands up tight, get through these next 2 rounds, and then use your athleticism late down the stretch.
So AJ goes out round 5, rolls the dice, takes the advice of his cornerman, which you're going to do. You're going to listen to your cornerman, well, you should do anyway. And as he threw that uppercut, Dubois just walked him onto a right hand. Now, I've heard Eddie Hearn say that AJ was getting back into the fight and he could have won it. He could have won it at that point. That's bullshit. He landed a decent right hand. Dubois stepped back. He got his feet back under him. His leg was a little bit, it was knocked off balance. Then AJ went for another right hand. And Dubois was looking him in the eye, guard tight, poised with that right-hand counter. And as he backed up into the corner, he knew AJ was coming. AJ took that advice, went for the big uppercut, rolled the dice, and got chinned. Walked into a perfectly timed little counter-punch right hand. Easy little counter-punch, not taking anything away from Daniel Dubois. He had to throw it. But it's textbook stuff. Sit back right hand as AJ throws the uppercut. And that was the end of AJ. He walked into a crunching right hand in round 5, and it was totally unnecessary, and that was the end of him. It looked like he'd been tasered. He was in a bad way. His right leg stiffened. It was sad to see, to be honest. He rolled over onto his back. He was trying to sit up. His central nervous system his brain was telling his legs to get up, and it wasn't working. It wasn't functioning. So that's a damaging knockout. That is a bad knockout. And then he rolled over to his front, and he fell over onto his face. He just didn't have he had no sort of control of his body. It was bad, really. It was bad to see and sad to see, like I've said, and it was a bad knockout and a damaging knockout. And I'm not going to blame Ben Davison. I've just pointed out that he took his advice. I'm not going to blame him because he's rolled the dice. It could have paid off for him. He'd have looked like a genius, wouldn't he, Ben Davison? If AJ would have landed the uppercut and got the knockout, he'd have been the best trainer in the world. So you can't just blame him. AJ didn't execute it correctly. But for me, the advice and the tactics would be to listen. You've had a terrible start, similar to me with Jermaine Taylor. So at round 3, I got dropped. And George Groves dropped me in round 1 of that first fight. I won both them fights. What I did was I listened to Rob McCracken, kept my composure, kept my guard tight, just tried to not get hit with too many shots. Just stay in the fight. Don't get pushed backwards. Meet the guy as he comes, roll onto his chest, punch him around the body, get back behind your jab and get your guard up, and just get 2, 3, maybe 4 rounds in. I finished Jermaine Taylor in round 12 after losing most of them rounds, but I came away with a victory. AJ going for it and rolling the dice in round 5 was the reason that he's lost that fight and got a bad knockout.
So in the clip, there's a lot of things to address. First off, he gives Daniel Dubois credit, and I think everyone should give Daniel Dubois credit. We underestimated Daniel. Arguably, nobody should have. But maybe the false dawn of Anthony Joshua, and I think his overconfidence kind of gave the British public or people that may have thought he had more experience than Daniel, the belief that he would win this fight fairly easily. He'd go through a bit of strife, but fairly easily. But I remember listening to, I think it was Showbiz, the adult, and he mentioned something that was pretty important. It was that Anthony Joshua, whoever is his trainer, he actually listens to what they tell him, and he molds straight into that way of being when he fights under that trainer. Now, if you remember that, I think it was the Jermaine Franklin fight when he fought with Derek James, he had a guard. He had a really good guard. That's one thing about Derek James. Fundamentals and the basics, fighting behind the jab and having a guard. And he did that in that fight. Because if you watch that fight back, a lot of people say he struggled with Franklin. But I think what a lot of people fail to realise is that Jermaine Franklin is really, really, really good. He's a really good fighter. And he actually flattered to deceive a lot of people. And he gave Joshua trouble because he was good. Sometimes some fighters don't get the chances to show how good they are because of life and obviously responsibilities, and that's how things are. Sometimes once they get the chance, you can actually see how good they are, you know. So it's about opportunity and time. If you don't have any of those, you can't really showcase what you've got to show. But anyway, if you look at even Errol Spence, that's one thing about Errol Spence that's always stood him in good stead. Even in the Terence Crawford fight, his guard, even though he got beat from pillar to post by Terence Crawford, he was still in the fight because he had a good guard. It's just that Crawford's IQ and Crawford's brutalness just managed to overcome that. But anyway, back to what Carl Froch was saying. The first thing he mentioned was about Ben Davison, and arguably the advice that Ben Davison gave Anthony Joshua. Now, we know Anthony Joshua likes to throw the uppercut because it's one of his signature punches that he uses. He used it in a Klitschko fight. He's used it pretty frequently in other fights, and it serves him in good stead. But there has been times when he's used it and he's missed, and due to the fact that the other fighters are probably that scared of the next shot that's coming, they're backed off because the shots have been wild. But he has always had a problem with telegraphing, especially uppercuts and the right hand. And like now, as you get more in depth into the heavyweight boxing game and you become more experienced, you're gonna get found out when you over telegraph or you overextend, because boxing's about keeping things cute and keeping things basic and keeping things simple, because that's the best way to, how can I put it, execute your punches, especially when you find someone dangerous like Daniel Dubois. Now, the advice that they gave him in the corner with Lee Wiley, that he should, once the double jab's been thrown, he should either slip it and then go for an uppercut. Joshua must know by that amount of time in the ring, and obviously I think it's the 4th round, going into the 5th round, that right hand's going to come after the double jab. You can see it. Even people watching the fight can see it. So if they're telling Joshua to do that, and Joshua is in the ring knowing that the right hand might come back, shouldn't he have actually thought about using his guard, or even thought about, you know, feinting and then seeing what Dubois does and trying to get him to commit to something else before even throwing that shot? And the advice what they gave him was a bit redundant, because as Carl Froch points out, Shane McGuigan, because obviously he's trained Daniel before, he knows what Daniel's going to do, said that advice is dangerous. Why would you throw that when you know the right hand's going to come and it's going to leave your chin up in the air? And we know Joshua's not been blocking for most of the 3 rounds of the fight that he's been in, so why would you tell him to do that? It's weird. It's like, I'm not saying it's like they sabotaged him, but it's either like they were inept or incompetent, or maybe they saw something that wasn't there, because even Joshua must have questioned that advice himself, but he still went out and did what they said, and they said roll the dice, and he did it. So in this respect, can we actually blame Joshua for the advice he was given? It's kind of, I say 70% yes, Ben Davison's fault, and 30% Joshua's, because if he's listening to his corner, which is what he's supposed to do, that's fine and dandy. But you're the fighter in the ring. You must have common sense to know that if you do certain things, there's going to be a certain reaction. So why would you listen to that advice, especially when the person, how can I put it, you just only just hurt him then you'd go and do that. The thing what we used to like about Joshua is once he hurt the fighter in his prior fights, he'd follow up with other shots. He wouldn't just throw an uppercut. He used to throw combinations, and that used to actually overwhelm the opponent, and then he could actually finish them. So he wouldn't relying on just one specific shot. In this aspect, it's like he's relying on one shot based off what they've taught him, which is right hand dominance and uppercuts for some strange reason, to knock out Daniel Dubois, to get it over and done with. But even Dubois, even though he hits hard, he's not relying on one shot. He's relying on combinations, which is textbook boxing. So I'm kind of dumbfounded by the advice, and I'm dumbfounded by how can I put it, the impetus that they're using to gas him up to do certain things. It didn't make any sense. The logic just, it's a bit flawed. But anyway, Carl goes on to say he doesn't blame Ben Davison, he blames Joshua because he didn't keep his guard up, which to be fair is true. And then he was talking about when Joshua got hurt, it was like he was tasered, and it's a bit of a weird comparison and a weird thing to use when someone gets knocked out. It's a bit spiteful as well, because I get the impression that sometimes when you see certain things in media and certain things happen to people like to ridicule and mock and how can I put it, kick a man when he's down. And even though he's saying the opposite things that he's not, there is the jealousy there, because he's talking about how many people were in Wembley. Then he's also talking about he listened to Rob McCracken, and because Joshua left Rob McCracken, there's still a bit of like angst or bitterness over that. But I don't know. Me personally, it does seem like there's some kind of axe to grind, even if it's subtly, and maybe he doesn't realise it, but subliminally or subconsciously, he actually does not like Joshua at all, even if it's down to the fact that he is giving his opinion and he's being straightforward. It's more of the fact that there's bitterness. I don't know, maybe he's just jealous of the fact that he has become that successful and he never had the chance to do that. But the comparison where you comparing yourself to other people and talking about your fights and then their fights, it's two different things. It's night and day. People shouldn't do that. Everyone's at the level they're at, and that's your level. And if you overcome that or surpass that, then that's down to your growth. So once you're on your decline, or you know you're in your stage where you're cruising in life and chilling, it doesn't really matter. You're looking back at, you know, the past. It's just experience. So to compare your experience to that person's experience, to some extent I understand, but like to another extent I don't, because it just comes off a bit corny. But anyway, what are your thoughts on what Carl Froch says? Do you agree? Do you agree with a lot of what he says? Do you think he's bitter? Do you think he's a bit jealous? Or do you think it was a spot on analysis and he was on the money and everything he said was right and it didn't come off a bit crass when he was talking about Joshua being tasered? And the reason I keep focusing on the tasered part is because if you watch certain media, when it comes to police and certain demographics and certain things happen, when they get tasered, that's the type of things you see. So to liken it to that, it's a bit crass and a bit insensitive. So, you know, because it's boxing. At the end of the day, people are there in the heavyweight division, they're gonna get knocked out. You know, nobody's comparing when Carl's been knocked out or been all over the show, you know, or knocked down to being tasered, you know. So I don't know. But anyway, leave your thoughts in the comment section. Like, comment and subscribe. And that is another one from the one and only Knockout Legends. Peace.